It starts with a sound, or rather the lack of one. In the nonstop chaos of the Northwood County Animal Shelter, a place filled with yaps, whines, and barks, there was one kennel that was completely silent, Kennel C12. And in the grim world of an animal shelter, silence is rarely a good thing. It's the sound of giving up. Inside was an old Belgian Malinois. His muzzle was gray, his eyes were cloudy, and he moved like every step was a painful memory. He was brought in as a stray, found wandering along a highway, totally indifferent to the danger. No collar, no tags, no microchip. Just another anonymous old dog, likely nearing the end of a short, lonely stay. This story has become something of a modern legend, a tale whispered in veteran communities and shared online. While the specific dog may be a composite of many real heroes, the story itself shines a light on a staggering debt we owe to heroes we don't even recognize. It's a story about how we see value and the invisible histories that walk among us. In a shelter, you have to prioritize. The cute, the young, the fluffy, they get adopted first. The old Malinois, who the staff ironically named Major, was basically invisible. Younger volunteers would try to get him to play, offering treats and toys with cheerful voices, but Major would just lift his head, look at them with those ancient, tired eyes, and lay his head back down. He never wagged his tail, he never barked, he never even came to the front of his kennel. The more seasoned staff, jaded and burned out, were less kind. To them, Major was a problem, an old, unsocial dog taking up space a more marketable puppy could use. "Look at him," one of the senior techs, Dave, would say. "Just another one somebody dumped when he got old. Won't even look at you, what's the point?" Another staffer might laugh, a tired, hollow sound. Tried to give him the squeaky toy. He looked at me like I was an idiot. Their jokes weren't really malicious. They came from a place of deep, corrosive burnout. It was easier to mock the silent dog than to face the heartbreak of another lost cause. But Major had these odd, disciplined quirks that didn't fit. When his food was put in the kennel, he wouldn't eat until the handler left and the gate was locked. He'd wait, perfectly still, until he was alone. When they hosed down the floors at night, he wouldn't scramble away from the water. He'd retreat to a dry corner, lie in a compact tuck, and stay motionless until it was over. He seemed to be waiting for a command, an all clear that never came. Jenna, a young volunteer, noticed. "It's strange," she told Dave one day. "It's like Hess waiting for an order. The way he watches everything, he doesn't seem like a normal stray." Dave just shrugged, or has just shut down. Happens to the old ones. Don't get attached, kid. Hess on the preliminary list for next Tuesday. The preliminary euthanasia list. A death sentence, pending a miracle. Jenna felt sick. She looked back at Kennel C-12. Major was standing perfectly still, staring at a wall as if he was seeing something miles and years away. She couldn't shake the feeling they were all missing something big. Finalizing the euthanasia list meant one last, bureaucratic review of each animal's file. Major's was thin, an intake photo, an estimated age, and notes like unresponsive and non-reactive. But the shelter manager, Maria, saw a small note from the vet. Faint tattoo, inner right thigh, illegible, appears to be alphanumeric, T4, followed by smeared digits. Tattoos weren't unheard of, but this format was strange. Maria paused. It was a total long shot, but with Dave's cynical jokes and Jenna's quiet worry in her mind, she felt she had to try. "Jenna," she called out, "take a look at this." They started digging. Calls to breeder registries and lost pet databases went nowhere. Hours passed, and hope started to fade. As Maria was about to give up, Jenna, who had been scrolling through old forums for working dog enthusiasts, found something. Deep in a thread from years ago, a retired Air Force kennel master had written a post about identifying older military dogs. It said, "Back in the day before universal microchipping, some of the Lachlan-bred dogs had thigh tattoos. One of the experimental batches in the early 2000s used a T prefix for tactical followed by a unit designator and serial. T4 could have been one of them." Jenna's heart pounded. Lachlan Air Force Base, home of the Department of Defense Military Working Dog Program. "Maria," she whispered, "I think I found something." "A military dog?" It seemed impossible. Military working dogs are elite assets. They aren't just found on the side of a highway. After their service, policy and a strong community network are in place to ensure they are adopted, often by their former handlers. For one to be abandoned was unthinkable. The old kennel master's profile had an email. It was their only lead. Maria typed a fast, desperate message. "Subject, urgent MWD identification inquiry. Sir," she wrote. "We are a county animal shelter with a senior Belgian Malinois stray. He has a faint tattoo on his inner thigh starting with T4. A post you wrote suggested this could be a Lackland ID. The dog is scheduled for euthanasia in 48 hours. We think the full number is T42378. Any information you have could save his life." She attached Major's sad intake photo, hit send, and they waited. They were no longer just trying to save a stray. They were trying to solve a mystery. Less than an hour later, an email came through. It was from the retired kennel master, Sergeant Major Frank Peterson. His words were electric. "Do not, under any circumstances, let anything happen to that dog," it began. "That is not Major. That is MWD Ragnarok. Call sign Ragnarok. Serial number T42378. And he is a hero." Peterson said he'd make some calls. 2 hours later, a second email arrived with a scanned document. As Maria and Jenna read it, their shock turned into a profound sense of awe and shame. The thin file of the anonymous stray was suddenly the history of a warrior. Name: MWD Ragnarok. Major ID: T42378. Specialty: Tactical Explosive Ordnance Detection Unit, 75th Ranger Regiment. 2nd Battalion Handler: Sergeant Michael Davies. Deployments: 3 tours in Afghanistan. Service record summary. Confirmed finds: located 17 IEDs and 4 weapon caches. Lives saved, estimated, over 50%. During a raid, Ragnarok detected a pressure plate IED at a breach point, saving the entire entry team. After his handler, SGT Davies, was wounded, Ragnarok stood over him, defending him from an enemy combatant until help arrived. During a firefight, a grenade landed near 2 wounded Rangers. Without a command, Ragnarok broke from his position, grabbed one soldier's gear in his teeth and dragged him to cover. He then returned and did the same for the second man just seconds before the grenade detonated. The last entry was a gut punch. Status: honorably retired in 2015 due to what is now recognized as a form of canine PTSD. Handler, Sergeant Michael Davies, was killed in action during a subsequent deployment in 2016. The opportunity to adopt Ragnarok was then extended to his family. Maria looked up, her face pale. The staff had been walking past a decorated war veteran, making jokes. The quiet, withdrawn dog they saw as shut down was a hero suffering from the invisible wounds of war. His stillness wasn't apathy. It was the discipline of a soldier. His silence wasn't surrender. It was the dignity of an animal who had survived horrors they could never imagine. Dave, the cynical tech, had come in to see what was happening. He read the service record over Maria's shoulder, his face going white. He backed away from the screen, looked toward the kennels, and whispered, "Oh my God, what have we been doing?" The news sent a shockwave through the shelter. The euthanasia order was shredded. Ragnarok was moved into the quiet office and given a soft orthopedic bed. The staff cooked him a meal of boiled chicken and rice. He took it all in with that same stoic calm, his eyes still scanning the room. He was still on watch. The weight of their ignorance hit the staff hard, especially Dave. He slowly knelt down near the old dog. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick. "I am so sorry, soldier." For the first time, the dog's ears twitched. He lifted his head and met Dave's gaze, holding it for a long moment. But being sorry wasn't enough. Maria decided to go public to find him the home he deserved. She wrote a post for the shelter's Facebook page, telling the whole story. She described the quiet old dog they'd all overlooked and their own failure to see who he was. Then, she told his story, his name, his unit, his service, and the sacrifice of his handler, Sergeant Davies. She ended with a plea: "This is MWD Ragnarok. He saved the lives of more than 50 American soldiers. He is a hero. We failed to see him, but now we do. He has earned a retirement of peace, comfort, and love. Please help us find him the hero's welcome he deserves." She attached his grim intake photo and a new one of him resting on his bed, looking noble and tired. Then she clicked share. What happened next was a digital explosion. The post went from 1,000 shares to 10,000 overnight, then 50,000. It was everywhere. Veterans groups, K9 pages, even major news outlets. The shelter's phone rang off the hook. The inbox was flooded. Most of the messages were from one community, veterans. They were from soldiers who served in the same areas, from handlers who understood the bond he'd lost, from families who knew that sacrifice firsthand. They didn't just want a dog. They wanted to honor a fallen soldier by caring for his partner. They wanted to bring a brother-in-arms home. The staff waded through hundreds of heartfelt applications. They had to get this right. One, however, stood out. It was a hand-delivered letter from a man named William Thorne, a retired command sergeant major. "I served for 30 years," he wrote. "I was never a handler, but I had dogs like Ragnarok save my men more times than I can count. I'm retired now. I have a quiet house, a fenced yard, and a deep respect for what this dog has given our country. I can't replace Sergeant Davies. No one can. But I can offer his partner a quiet, dignified peace where he can finally stand down from his watch. It would be my honor." This was it. Maria knew this was the one. When CSM Thorne walked into the shelter, he carried himself with a quiet authority. He didn't rush toward Ragnarok. He just stood in the doorway, observing the old dog. Ragnarok lifted his head, his ears perked, watching the man with an intensity no one had seen before. Slowly, Thorne entered and knelt down. Giving the dog space, he didn't speak, he just waited. After a long minute, Ragnarok pushed himself up on his aching hips, walked over to the retired command sergeant major, and gently nudged the man's hand with his nose. Thorne closed his eyes for a second before speaking, in a low, calm voice. "Easy, soldier. Your watch is over. It's time to come home." Ragnarok leaned against the man's leg, and for the first time since he arrived at the shelter, he wagged his tail. As CSM Thorne led Ragnarok out, the entire staff lined the hallway in respectful silence. Some had tears in their eyes. He was no longer a stray, no longer a number on a list. He was MWD Ragnarok, a warrior who had finally received his hero's welcome. While Ragnarok's story is a powerful legend, a composite of the trials many real four-legged soldiers face, the challenges it highlights are very real. Organizations like the U.S. War Dogs Association and Mission K9 Rescue work tirelessly to make sure these heroes get the retirement they deserve. They help reunite retired dogs with their handlers, find loving homes for them, and cover medical care and transportation. By supporting these groups, you can help ensure that no hero is ever left behind or forgotten in a shelter. In the end, this story isn't just about medals or battles. It's about what happens after the war is over. The quiet, invisible wounds that so many veterans, both human and canine, carry. Ragnarok's journey from a battlefield to a cold shelter floor is a stark reminder of our collective responsibility to remember. His tale, whether it's one dog's true story or a legend that captures a deeper truth, forces us to ask a difficult question. How many other heroes do we walk past every day without a second glance? They aren't always in uniform. Sometimes they're old, gray, and silent in a shelter kennel, waiting for someone to see the history in their eyes. The staff at Northwood didn't just save a dog. They were given a powerful lesson in honor and the importance of looking closer. In honoring this story, we're reminded to look for the value in the forgotten, and to remember that the deepest scars are often the ones we can't see.